Good afternoon. Let's go ahead and get started. First of all, let me welcome you to our forum for the Commonwealth Attorney and the Sheriff's Office put on by Richmond City Democratic Committee and Metro Area Young Dems. So we're excited about having the opportunity to bring this education piece to you. My job today is to actually introduce you to Professor Henry L. Chambers, Jr. And I just met him, and we've had a wonderful spirited conversation about what's going on in the nation, what's going on in the city of Richmond, and what's going to happen next as far as our election is concerned. Before I start giving you some information about Professor Chambers, let me just remind you there's a primary, so please grab your friends and family and your next door neighbors and go vote, all right? Professor Chambers teaches, let me pull my glasses up. I know, right? Professor Chambers teaches and writes in the area of constitutional law, criminal law and religion, and employment discrimination. He is active with the Virginia State Bar, including serving as chair of its section on the education of lawyers from 2007 to 2009, and has been a member of the American Law Institute since 2002. Professor Chambers serves as a special assistant attorney general for the for redistricting matters for the Commonwealth of Virginia from 2011 to 2013. He frequently also lectures on constitutional law through We the People program, which provides civic education instructions to school teachers and the public at James Madison, Montpelier, and the Federal Executive Institution of Charlottesville. Professor Chambers has tons of awards. He also has done several presentations, but without further ado, I'm going to bring Professor Chambers up here so that he can go ahead on and get the program started and get our candidates to answer your questions and talk to you about themselves. Thank you very much. All right. You can candidates up here? Please. So sweet. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you very much. Right. Make sure that if folks here, all right? Great.
All right, so now people can hear. Fantastic, fantastic. Technology challenge, sorry about that. So, all right, as Jerome said, I'm Henry Chambers, law professor at University of Richmond, and will be the theoretical moderator of this debate. It's great to see two candidates here running in the primary, Commonwealth Attorney Colette McEachin and Mr. Tom Barber. As the folks know, the opening statements, 2-minute opening statements, and then we'll go into questions, 90 seconds for each candidate, and then a 30-second rebuttal at the end of that. There will be time for questions from the audience over, which are being collected now and are also being collected online. So we will have a nice discussion. I'm sure it'll be a fine discussion. We'll go from there. Commonwealth Attorney Colette McEachin will start. And let's go ahead and get at it. Looking forward to your opening statements.
Thank you so much, Professor. I love my job. It is the best job in the world. My name, as the professor said, is Colette Wallace McEachin. I am the elected Commonwealth's attorney for the city of Richmond, and I am honored that you have entrusted me with providing public safety, second chances, and accountability to all of the residents and citizens in Richmond for the past 5 years. And because I love my job, because we have the best Commonwealth Attorney's Office in the state, because we have the most experienced attorneys, not only at dealing with the violent crime that still plagues Richmond, but in providing second chances, a community justice reform unit, expungement processes, and a host of alternatives to incarceration, like our drug court docket and our behavioral health docket at the general district court level, the JDR court level, and the circuit court level. Because all of those, along with community support and with my activity in the community, attending countless community meetings, social and civic engagement, because of all of that, Richmond is safer now than it has been in a long time. And we know that it goes up and down, but because of that, I ask you to re-elect me as your Commonwealth's attorney.
Thank you so much. Mr. Barber.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you so much to the Richmond City Democratic Committee, to Metro Richmond Area Young Democrats, and of course to Professor Chambers for hosting this wonderful event. I'm Tom Barber, and I'm running for Commonwealth's attorney. I'm a trial lawyer. I live in Churchill with my wife, who's a much better trial lawyer than I am, and our 2 daughters. I run my own practice. It's grounded in criminal defense, but I do civil litigation on issues that tend to draw people into the legal system. I'm always on the tenant side in landlord-tenant cases, the employee side in employment litigation, and I prosecute wage theft for people. Before I ran my own firm, I was a prosecutor in Richmond's Commonwealth Attorney's Office under then Commonwealth Attorney Mike Herring, where I also served as a senior policy advisor on issues of public safety reform and root cause prosecution. I was empowered to do that work because I came to Richmond as a differently situated lawyer. I brought significant experience and leadership in complex operations, having served in Iraq and Afghanistan as a captain, an intelligence officer, and a foreign military advisor. I've personally policed people. I've seen when that can be effective, but I've understand its limits. When Mike left, I started my practice and started a nonprofit connecting people in the system to services they need to reduce their recidivism and stay out of it. I'm running because I think we're missing significant opportunities for public safety and the rule of law. I'm excited to speak with you all this afternoon about those issues as a public safety professional and as someone who has experience in policing, trial work, and social work.
Thank you so much. So first question, since Commonwealth Attorney McKeechin went first on the opening, Mr. Barber, question to you. So what in your experiences should convince the public that you are the right person to lead the Commonwealth Attorney's Office for the next 4 years?
As I was mentioning in my opening, I'm the candidate on this stage who actually brings a multidisciplinary public safety professional perspective. I have personally policed people. I've trained foreign security forces to police people. I've seen when that can be effective, but I also understand very well what the limits of policing are. I also have the broadest trial work experience on this stage. I've been a prosecutor, a defense attorney, and a civil litigator. So I understand trial work from different perspectives, not just the perspective of the Commonwealth. Lastly, I've actually done social work. In my nonprofit, I would pick people up from gas stations, take them to their substance use disorder appointments, help them navigate nonprofits in the city like Virginia Supportive Housing to move them into permanent homes. So I understand very well and firsthand how social work can be used to reduce crime and increase public safety. We haven't seen a multidisciplinary approach from this office, and that's because we don't have a multidisciplinary leader in the Commonwealth Attorney's seat. What we've seen are the same old approaches time and time again, and I would bring a perspective that would work towards positive change and progress, not just happiness or satisfaction with the status quo.
Commonwealth Attorney McEachin.
So I find it interesting that someone who worked in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office for only 10 months years ago believes that he has more experience than someone who has been with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office for 30 years. I find it laughable that Mr. Barber would say that his experience policing people in a military operation has anything to do with providing public safety to the city of Richmond. A little confusion up here with the signs. Okay, all right. Mr. Barber's lack of knowledge about what has been happening in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office under my administration just shows that he's not paying attention. And I would clarify that his implication that he left the office because Mike Herring left the office or after Mike Herring left the office is not true. Mr. Barber worked as an assistant Commonwealth's attorney doing general district court dockets for 10 months. He only lasted 10 months in the office, and then Mike Herring left the following year.
30-second response.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. As the Commonwealth's attorney was recently quoted in a local publication out of Churchill saying that they were hired by Joe Morrissey and they've been in the office ever since. And that, I think, is kind of what you hear right now and what you see in terms of the approach to public safety in the city. I do think it's valuable to have defended someone, to have seen what it looks like to make social work for someone in a positive way, to have not just spent your time prosecuting. I came to work in that office for Mike Herring, but when he left, I wasn't going to stay and watch it go backwards as it has.
Thank you very much. So, Commonwealth Attorney McEachin, the public may want to know how the last 4 years have gone at the CA's office to determine how successful the next 4 years may be. So, can you identify any successes over the last 4 years and what changes you might make in how the CA's office functions over the next 4 years?
Yes, thank you. So over the past 4 years, one of the biggest changes and one of the best things that has happened in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, which I created, was a community justice reform unit. And because that unit exists, people now know how to get their criminal records expunged. People now no longer have to pay the Commonwealth Attorney's Office a service fee to have that petition brought before court. Because of the Community Justice Reform Unit, people now have had the opportunity to see me with public forums presenting information such as the ABCs of criminal law, being out in the community. We just had a forum last week or earlier this week on mental health, because May is Mental Health Awareness Week. And so the office has been involved in the community. The office has brought down crime. And for all of those reasons, I'm looking forward to running as Commonwealth's attorney and reelection.
And sir, you'd ask the Commonwealth's attorney what their view on successes were. Is that the question you have for me?
Yeah, exactly. 30 seconds. Can you identify any successes over the last 4 years and what changes you might make in how the CA's office functions over the next 4 years?
Like I said, I think we are missing significant opportunities for public safety and the rule of law in Richmond. Chief among them are some of the points that the Commonwealth's attorney touched on. We were promised in 2021 that there would be a concerted effort to establish restorative justice programming and alternatives in the city. But it was reported in the Richmond Times-Dispatch earlier this year that the office has only put 20 people through that programming in the last 4 years. And this is in a city that sees about 10,000 major crimes per year. Unfortunately, that is a broken promise. It's a failure. We've also not seen expansion of alternative dockets. Those programs have been seat limited for a very, very long time. We're not seeing prosecution of public corruption, interference in our elections, misappropriations of hundreds of thousands of dollars by government employees who are no longer with the city. and we're seeing the largest uptick in gun violence in recent memory, upwards of 40% in terms of shootings and 30% in terms of murders, so much so that our mayor had to establish an Office of Gun Violence Prevention to focus on that. I would use Virginia's red flag laws to intervene in gun violence, to keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people. When asked why this office was not doing that, the Commonwealth's attorney's response was that they were doing honestly nothing to use that procedure. I would use special grand juries to investigate public corruption, and I would actually take a social services approach to nonviolent and petty offenses.
Thank you. Response.
Yes, thank you. Once again, Mr. Barber is not paying attention to what the office he wants to run actually does. If he had gone on the office's website, he would have seen that we have a very active restorative justice program, that in fact, we have created a standalone Richmond Restorative Justice group that is not attorneys, that is regular people out in the community who are willing and able to facilitate group conferences to take care of issues between people.
Right. Mr. Barber, the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office is a part of the government's law enforcement function. What should the Commonwealth Attorney's Office's relationship be with the police and the sheriff's office? And can the Commonwealth's Attorney help control or influence possible misconduct in those areas of law enforcement?
Thank you for this question, because I think oftentimes there's a perception that although the Commonwealth Attorney's Office clearly works with law enforcement and clearly works with the Sheriff's Office in terms of how prosecution happens in the city, that there might be a natural tendency for these parties to think of themselves as actual partners. But truly, the Commonwealth Attorney's Office needs to be a partner to public safety and the rule of law. That's their job. And it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're an individual citizen, if you are a deputy at the jail, if you're a Richmond police officer, if you're engaging in criminality or misconduct, if you are not, working to achieve public safety, if you're not following the rule of law, then the Commonwealth Attorney has to maintain that true North Star and prosecute individuals for doing that. That being said, I recently had a very productive meeting with the Richmond Police Department's union. I explained this exact same thing to them. They've made a decision to withhold their endorsement of this Commonwealth Attorney's Office, and I think that's telling. Although I would draw a hard line in terms of the relationships between the CA's office and law enforcement, I would very much look forward to working with this department to keep people safe.
Commonwealth Attorney McKeachin, what do you think?
So the police union is called RCOP, R-COP. And Mr. Barber spoke with the union president, and I spoke with the union president. And having heard from both of us, the union has decided to be neutral. And I am okay with that, because that shows you and some people who are concerned that the Commonwealth Attorney's Office is hand in glove with the police department or other law enforcement, including ICE, that nothing could be farther from the truth. We are our own independent constitutional office, and the only people who I report to are not the mayor, not the attorney general, not the governor, not ICE. I report to you all. That's what a good Commonwealth Attorney's Office does. And because I have been doing this for 30 years, I don't need to develop a relationship with RCOP or the police chief or judges or clerks or various community organizations. That's already there.
Mr. Barber, 30-second response.
And I think that part of the reason for the withholding of that endorsement is I've not seen cooperation between the office and the department on issues of public corruption or on issues of gun violence, especially. There was a recent story by Tyler Lane on homicide rates in the city. And so that folks understand, only about 50% of homicides are being cleared in the city right now. Commonwealth Attorney's Office is only successfully prosecuting about 60% of those, which means most people who've committed murder in the city right now are getting away with it.
Thank you. So, Commonwealth Attorney McEachin, does the Commonwealth Attorney's Office have sufficient resources to do its job? And if the office received an infusion of new resources, how would you allocate those funds?
So I think anyone who manages his office, and the Richmond Commonwealth Attorney's Office has 40 prosecutors, 20 paralegals, and then 10 members of the victim witness advocates. So it's an office of about 70 people. We are spread through 3 courthouses, the main courthouse, downtown, Manchester, and then JDR. So if I was queen of the world, and I had more money, Professor, I would hire more prosecutors so we could spend even more time supporting the victims and witnesses of violent crime. If I was queen of the world, given everything that most of us are aware of regarding the new administration and the Office of the Inspector General and what they have found, I would create a group within the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office that would focus on those issues. Right now, it's myself and a few other attorneys, and I would devote more resources to that issue.
Thank you. So, Mr. Barber, if you were king of the world and you had more resources, what would you allocate them to?
So because you're a law professor, I'm not going to buck the hypothetical. I'm going to engage with it. Because deep down, I don't know how we can justify putting more and more resources into law enforcement and prosecutorial authorities when our schools are short on funds, when we don't have enough money to fully fund social services and other things that really do drive down crime in a long-term productive way. But if we had the funds, I think a good use of that would be to try to build some of that capacity within the office. We could hire social workers who could do the type of mobile case management that needs to be done, especially with people who are consistently recidivating and committing new petty nonviolent crimes, and actually work with them to drive down their personal recidivism rates. If we do that proactive work, we're going to see crime go down, and that's ultimately what a Commonwealth Attorney's Office should be interested in, doing the work to reduce recidivism, doing the work to increase public safety. Once a case comes into the office, a crime's already occurred. We've already had someone hurt, something stolen, and we're about to prosecute someone and also probably hurt them in a long-term way. The goal should be to make sure that doesn't happen in the first place, and social worker resources would be a great way to do that.
30 seconds. Okay, 30 seconds.
So, Mr. Barber, because of his inexperience, does not understand the role of the Commonwealth's attorney. And he is conflating that and confusing that with the role of an educator, or the role of a social worker, or the role of a police officer. My role as your Commonwealth's attorney is to provide public safety. There are a number of ways to do that, but they begin with the offender recognizing and accepting some accountability. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Mr. Barber, the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office may not be able to prosecute all crimes that occur in Richmond. Prosecutors need to prioritize crimes to prosecute. How should a Commonwealth's Attorney's Office decide which cases to pursue, and when should a prosecutor decline to prosecute a case the prosecutor believes they could win?
There's a lot there. I'm going to try to tackle it in 90 seconds. Okay.
We may go for a second question out of that.
Sure. So I think this is a good follow-up question to the resource question, because it gets at this notion of how do we spend our resources? How do we spend our time? We live in a world of constrained resources. And from a prosecutor's perspective, often that singular resource is time. How do I spend my day, every day? What cases do I focus on? When we spend a lot of time and energy on prosecuting to the fullest extent low-level, petty, nonviolent crimes, we end up spending less and less time focusing on priorities like violent crime and gun violence. And we don't do things like use red flag laws to intervene early in what could become shootings and keep people safe, keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people. So I would effectively prioritize the prosecution of gun violence and violent crime. Part of the way to do that, of course, is to advocate for more resources. But in a world where we're not going to get them, the way to do that is to adopt more of a social services approach to lower level nonviolent crimes, require accountability in the courtroom, but refer people out to services that they need in the community, services they need to address the circumstances, bringing them into the system. If we can work with people who are manageable to drive down their recidivism rates, we can focus on driving up our homicide clearance rates and our conviction rates for murders and violent gun violence.
Thank you.
Is that better? Is that better?
I can folks in the back hear us? Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Common Attorney Rikichi, wait,
Yeah, thank you.
90 seconds.
Thank you. So charging decisions are something that we deal with every day in our office, and we have a number of policies to divert people from being a felon. We have a number of alternatives to incarceration for the misdemeanor crimes that occur in the city of Richmond, for the nonviolent crimes that occur in the city of Richmond. There is a drug court docket for people with a substance abuse issue. There are behavioral health court dockets. There are a number of alternatives to a trial. And in fact, many people utilize those alternatives, get the resources and the help they need, and we do not see them again. But ultimately, it is up to an individual whether or not he or she wants to accept that help. And if the individual keeps robbing the ABC store, if that individual keeps threatening people in the community, then that individual has to be held accountable.
Thank you. 30 seconds, Mr. Barber.
So unfortunately, and most people would not know this because you've probably not experienced it, but this Commonwealth Attorney's Office currently uses a system of prosecution called horizontal prosecution. It means that prosecutors don't follow cases. So for the most part, cases are being passed between prosecutors. And that results in a system where it's really hard to get consistent outcomes in cases that should be treated the same. So there's no real system of discretion. That's one of the things that I would fix right away, is starting a system of discretion that can be applied consistently across individuals.
Thank you. I think there might be a little bit more meat on that bone. So let me ask this question to you, C.A. McEachin, and we'll go back and forth. Are there crimes in Richmond that should be more aggressively prosecuted than they have been in the past? And are there crimes in Richmond that should be less aggressively prosecuted than they have been in the past?
There are crimes that are being prosecuted in a different way than they would have been prosecuted 10 or 15, 20 years ago, because we now have the resources and because we have learned. Every profession has changed. Teachers do not teach the way they taught 20 or 30 years ago. Doctors do not practice medicine the way they did 20 or 30 years ago. And the same holds true to prosecutors. The crimes that we focus on are the high violent crimes, those recurring crimes. But we also are looking at the recidivist population. And I spoke about ABC stores because there was an article in the Times-Dispatch a little while ago about ABC store employees being reluctant to even stop people who are stealing from them. An attorney in my office has devised a way to aggregate those individual charges so that person is ultimately held responsible, so that ABC store employees can be safe, and so that your costs as a citizen can be driven down.
Thank you. Mr. Barber.
We absolutely need to have our prosecutors spending more of their time focused on gun violence, shootings, and public corruption issues that we're seeing in the city, and less time on nonviolent or petty offenses. Here's what I mean by that. For gun violence prosecution, again, we've got homicide rates that lag behind, homicide clearance rates that lag behind the national average and far behind the averages in our surrounding jurisdictions. You're seeing clearance rates of 80% or 100% in Henrico and Chesterfield, but only 50% in Richmond. We're also not using Virginia's red flag law to intervene early in potentially violent situations, especially amongst domestic abusers or young people who might have access to firearms. Those are two things that we should be doing more of. For things we should be doing less of is trying to pretend that we've got enough space in the courthouse to do all of the social work that needs to get done. These dockets are excellent. They're great to talk about, but they're seat limited. You're talking about a drug court that can maybe serve 100 people a year. Same with our behavioral health dockets. And again, this is in a city that sees about 10,000 major crimes per year. We need to extend the logic of those dockets out into the community and refer people out for services. But we don't see a system of discretion in this office to do that right now.
30-second response.
So once again, Mr. Barber is incorrect because he spent so little time actually being a prosecutor in the office. All of the attorneys have extreme knowledge and more skill right now than Mr. Barber does, even our least experienced attorneys. The homicide clearance rate is something, once again, that the police deal with. It is not a metric for the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. And in fact, every homicide that has been tried in the city of Richmond so far this year, and that is 12 of them, we've won them all. We've won them all.
Thank you. So Mr. Barber, can you talk to us about your approach to prosecuting crimes committed by juveniles, and what's the proper role of diversion programs rather than jail in those cases or any other cases?
As a general matter, I think most issues that we see in the juvenile system need to be handled within the actual academic environment. For example, in Martin Luther King Middle School, we've seen a restorative justice approach reduce in-school suspensions by about 50% over the last year. I think that's a great success. Generally, if we've got juveniles engaging in a crime for which the office should prosecute an adult, a violent crime, a serious crime, then I really do think it's appropriate to move them through the juvenile system. But for the most part, we need to be taking approaches that are flexible, that manage violent risk, but look out for this person over the long term and help them manage circumstances to move out of that pattern, to move out of the system. Frankly, it is a rarity to see a criminal record in the city, either as a prosecutor or defense attorney, for someone who doesn't have any prior involvement. Recidivism on a long enough timeline is extremely high in the city. I would estimate upwards of 80 to 90%. So when you get that first involvement, especially at the juvenile level, you're really in this moment where you're making decisions about whether this person is going to get the services they need to move out of the system and lead a productive life, or whether they're gonna cycle back into it for a very, very long time. And as a general rule, my approach with juveniles would be to focus on those social services, not on prosecution, not on incarceration.
Thank you.
Quickly,
90 seconds.
sorry, that's me. If you could just get as close as possible to those mics so that we can, the interpreters, it's like you're recording the music in the studio. Make sure you're as close as possible.
I'm not cool enough to record music in a studio.
Councilor McKeeching, 90 seconds.
If that's going to stay. So you all know that juveniles are treated differently than adults, and the entire juvenile system is a rehabilitative system. So most juveniles do not come in contact with our office because they are dealt with by the court services unit, which is completely separate and which already provides the social service resources, not just to the juvenile, but to his family, because juveniles generally are in the midst of some family things going on, some dysfunction going on, and that needs to be addressed holistically and with the parental support. If a juvenile has killed someone, has raped someone, has sodomized someone, is a recidivist, then all of the rehabilitative measures have not worked. And they can be transferred and certified to circuit court. And then the circuit court has even more resources to address their issues. So we are all trying to help juveniles not become adults with a criminal record.
30 seconds, Mr. Barber.
So I think something that perhaps is missed is that although I left this Commonwealth's attorney's office because I didn't want to be a part of it not progressing, I didn't leave the city of Richmond in terms of the litigation that needs to be done. I litigate this against this office frequently. And I recently had a juvenile case in which the principles offered here today were not put in play. I had to go through a full felony trial in the juvenile domestic courthouse in order to get to a judge who would take the matter under advisement and allow us to get to an alternative disposition that we should have reached in the first place.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, Commonwealth Attorney McKeachin, the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office has significant interaction with public defenders and private counsel. How should the CA's office and the public defender's office interact? Should they work together or should they be adversarial?
Well, the judicial criminal justice system is adversarial, but the people within it are not, because we see each other all the time. We are both the public defender's office, private criminal defense attorneys, the judges, the clerks, the sheriffs. We work with each other all the time, and it's like any other relationship. You don't want to burn bridges. You know that your word is your bond. You want to be trustworthy and trusting. And so, having been with the office for 30 years, I've seen a number of head public defenders. I've seen a number of public defenders through training, and I'm proud that my office currently employs at least 10 former public defenders who realized that they could be more effective as Commonwealth's attorneys.
Thank you. Mr. Barber, I understand you know a few public defenders.
I know some public defenders. I'm married to one. I've tried to submit some of our dinner dates for continuing legal education. They've all been rejected. But no, I think the general premise is correct that while the legal system is supposed to be adversarial, and I want to be clear about the reason why. The reason is not to pit parties against each other. It's because generally that's the process over hundreds of years we've decided in this country best reveals the truth of what actually happened and what the best way forward should be. So that process is adversarial in the sense that it's two parties against each other. But in terms of working with the public defender's office, here's, I think, a missed opportunity. Defense attorneys especially know what's going on with their clients. We know why they're committing the offenses. We know the circumstances in their lives that are leading them to involvement in the system. We know the obstacles to getting them to services they need to move out of the system. Try calling a Commonwealth attorney's office, a Commonwealth attorney in this office about those issues. What you'll hear is, that's great. What do you want to do about this case? This case. Because they're so focused on resolving cases, they're not thinking about the fact that while we might have 10,000 cases a year, we have a much fewer number of people per year repeatedly going through the system. So I think prosecutors and public defenders could work a lot better together, addressing the root causes of why these people are in the system and address that to reduce crime.
30 seconds.
My office and the 40 attorneys in my office are not allowed ethically to talk to a defendant. We cannot talk to someone once they're represented by an attorney. And so all of the information that we get is because we're having conversations with the attorney representing that defendant. And if that attorney does not give us information, if that defendant does not tell his or her attorney something that they think is important, we are not gods. We can't guess. And it would be wrong for us to assume that something is going on unless we hear that directly from Mr. Barber, who has hopefully taken the time to actually speak with his client and then get back in touch with us to let us know if there's an option to what's going to happen.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to ask a few questions. I know we have some audience questions as well, so I would love to turn us over in that direction.
Yes, thank you so much. So if you have a question, please come to the front. If you have some mobility issues, since we only have wired mics here, just raise your hand and someone will come to you to transmit your question. So, someone would like to come up?
This might be the only time you get to cross-examine a prosecutor, so.
I welcome it.
I'm happy to see people moving. Keep on coming, although I got tons of questions, but come on, keep on coming.
Hi, thank you very much for allowing me this time. Mike Weiss, I'm a resident of Richmond. My question is, I don't know if you all are, I know we just had a question about like the public defender's office, and I'm not sure how much you all are involved in that with citizens personally advocating for themselves. On the website, it says that you can go in personally and speak to someone for advice. But upon walking into the office, you're told you have to fill out a form.
My office or the public defender's office?
Public defender's office.
Okay, just want to make sure it's not my office.
Yeah, on the
Okay.
public defender's office.
Okay.
You know, that you have to fill out a form, and then someone will be back in touch with you within 2 weeks to just ask, you know, simple questions or get advice. Would that be something that you all would change in the future, or change the wording on the website?
So I will take this. So the public defender's office is completely separate from the Commonwealth Attorney's office. So I don't have any authority over how they handle their business, basically. You would have to address that with the head public defender or with Mr. Barber's wife, since she works there.
To that end, I'm very sorry that you've had this experience. Unfortunately, provision of funds for indigent representation is really not done very well in Virginia. In fact, people don't really realize this until the end of their case, but unless you're acquitted, there's really no such thing as a free lawyer. As a client, you will end up paying for public defender services after they're done. If you want to look for more resources, you can get online and look at the Legal Aid Justice Center that will take people in the way that you described, or Central Virginia Legal Aid Society, or if you want to hang out after the event, I'm happy to speak with you further, and I'll make sure that this feedback gets to Tracy Painter, who is the public defender for the city.
Thank you for taking my question. My question is about domestic violence and red flag laws. I'm a longtime Democrat, and for many years, with other gun organizations, other advocates have gone to the General Assembly to demand red flag laws, which take guns away from folks who have a domestic violence issue. Basically, like if you're going to do domestic violence, you can't have a gun in your house. I've had friends and family who have been sexually assaulted in this city. And also, like the rates of domestic partner abuse and murder is in this country is insane. After those fights, I'd like to know why there hasn't been more effort from the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, or what. Actually, let me ask this: what are either of you going to do in the future to make sure that these laws that we fought to get into place are actually protected, and that people are protected against domestic violence, especially gun violence?
So just for those of you who do not know, the red flag law was, as this young man says, enacted a few years ago. And it is a process by which someone, the victim of the domestic violence, a neighbor, contacts the police and says, I think that the person next door or in my house has a gun and it needs to be removed before they hurt themselves or me. The police then have to do an investigation independently. They can't just come in on somebody's word and take a gun. So there has to be an independent investigation. Then that has to go to a magistrate. The magistrate has to make its own independent investigation, or a judge, and then the police can go to the place and ask voluntarily if the person will give the gun. So it is, because of the compromises in the General Assembly, it's not a police officer knocking on your door and taking your gun. There is a process. I'm happy to let you know that there are at least 5 or 6 red flag cases currently pending in the Richmond Circuit Court.
So I actually litigate these, so I want to clarify a few things. There's really two legal issues at play here. The first is that certain domestic violence convictions come with a automatic removal of firearm rights for a period of years. But I think what the question was more getting at is what, if anything, can be done proactively by a Commonwealth Attorney's Office to use Virginia's red flag laws to intervene early in what could become gun violence incidents. Red flag law is just the name that we put on that. What it really is an emergency or a permanent substantial risk order. And if you read this code section, what you'll find is that law enforcement and Commonwealth Attorney's offices, and certain other enumerated parties like relatives, any of these folks can petition a court in Virginia in a civil action to ask that a court order that an individual judged to be a substantial risk to themselves or others be denied access to a firearm. So that doesn't have to really wait for police involvement to get done. The Commonwealth Attorney's Office should be a partner to those efforts. If I were the CA, I would be working with RPS especially to train our parents, teachers, counselors, and educators that they can come to my office to initiate these actions when we've got young people with access to firearms who are engaging in back and forth that may lead to a shooting at some point.
Thank you.
Professor Chambers, can I just interrupt since we're clarifying the red flag law?
30 seconds, go for it.
So Mr. Barber's assertion that you can just petition a court without an intervening investigation by an independent law enforcement agency is flatly wrong. And it wouldn't make sense, because otherwise then anyone could go and petition a court. So there has to be an independent investigation by a law enforcement agency. There has to be a sworn affidavit by that law enforcement officer, and that is what accompanies the petition to court. Thank you, Professor.
The great thing about the law is you can go read it for yourselves. I encourage you to do that.
Okay, so we have one question from the Zoom. It says, I'm excited by the restorative justice program. Can you speak to it, its progress, and what areas it has room to grow?
Sure. So for those of you, once again, who don't know, really quick definition, restorative justice is a voluntary program. So if someone is charged with a crime, a nonviolent crime, and they are willing as the offender to acknowledge that they are responsible and to speak with the victim, and if the victim in turn is also willing to speak with the offender, then my office has created a program, restorative justice, and a trained facilitator will get with each of those individuals, talk with them separately, and then meet with them together in a neutral room, a neutral venue. The two parties will work out what they want to have happen. court is not involved, the police are not involved, my office is not involved, other than having created this restorative justice platform. And then once the offender has satisfied whatever the victim wants, restitution, a letter of apology, cleaning up the graffiti itself, once that's done, my office will then dismiss the charge. And because the charge was dismissed, the offender can get his record expunged.
Cool. So that all sounds wonderful, and it very well could be. And that's what was promised us in 2021. The actual results have been quite different. It was reported in the Richmond Times-Dispatch earlier this year in an interview with the Commonwealth's attorney that actually only 20 people in the city have gone through this restorative justice programming, only 20. And that's in a city that sees approximately 10,000 major crimes per year. So what restorative justice programming actually is the issue? What program? I've heard from the public defender's office that despite pitching clients over and over and over again to get in this programming, people have been denied for one reason or another. So it doesn't actually exist. It's a talking point, and that is a great disappointment to me, and I hope to others who care about seeing that tool used, not just to hold offenders accountable, but also to make sure that victims get the justice they deserve.
You have the right to a quick 30-second response, or we'll go to one more question.
So having created the restorative justice program, having created the Richmond Restorative Justice Group, which has its own website and which I urge you all to look at, ultimately the victim has to agree and the defendant has to agree. And if you don't have that connection, then restorative justice will not work. I actually thought people would be really excited about it, but it turns out that if you have been the victim of a crime, you a lot of times want a traditional punishment, or the defendant is not prepared to accept the responsibility. And that is one of the tenets of my platform: public safety, second chances through restorative justice, but you have to accept responsibility. You have to accept responsibility. You have to accept that you did something wrong that harmed someone.
Thank you so much. One more question before we head into closing.
Good afternoon. So we know here in Richmond, about 1 in 10 people in Richmond are foreign-born, and our immigrant communities are growing around the Richmond area. And we've seen across the state and nationally that courthouses and different areas are suddenly now areas where increased federal immigration enforcement is happening. What are you doing, or what do you commit to doing in order to make sure that our immigrant communities who are scared to even go to court for smaller misdemeanors are able to kind of deal with the legal process whenever they do have any encounters, and still feel like they can go home to their families if that's the case after the case?
Thank you for the question. I think it's timely. We are living through an unprecedented situation in our federal government, and it is bleeding into how we live together in Richmond. I think the coverage is missing a certain perspective that I want to highlight for people. The incident in Charlottesville, for example, at the courthouse out there when ICE conducted a full custodial arrest, was about someone who was accused of a crime who is also an undocumented person. But courthouses also need to be places where undocumented people who are victims of crime can come get justice, who are witnesses of crimes can come participate in prosecution. And if our courthouses are seen as places that cannot accept undocumented people without risk of deportation or other extreme federal immigration enforcement, they are quickly going to become places that are closed to justice for anyone who's not a U.S. citizen, and that's unacceptable. Virginia Code empowers our sheriffs specifically to keep our courthouses free from disturbances and violence. There's nothing more disturbing or potentially violent than a full-scale custodial arrest. Those can go sideways very fast. That's why they typically only happen on the street. If I was the CA, I would work with our sheriff, our council, our mayor's office to take the public position that Virginia code requires us to keep our courthouse free from such actions so that our undocumented neighbors understand it's still a place that they can come and get justice.
So aside from those conversations already having taken place, and that is why so far there has not been any interruption in Richmond, here are the 4 things that I have actually done. First of all, there's a blue card initiative which is going to be distributed throughout the city of Richmond and will let our Hispanic and Latino residents know that they have constitutional rights. And so they can have that card, carry it with them, and that is something that will give them power and information. I've spoken with the JDR judges, and they are aware that people can petition for a standby guardian. So if you are afraid that you are going to be deported, you can go to the court and name the specific person who will take care of your family and your child if you leave from work and don't come back. That is already going on. The judges in all of the courthouses are aware of what is happening, obviously, and I'm in conversation with them. And they have said that short of a legal document, they will not allow anyone to basically bust up into their courthouse. So everything that we are doing to protect our Hispanic residents, our community members, we're going full force on.
Barbara, if you'd like 30 seconds.
I'm glad to see that our judges, and we have excellent judges in the circuit, have taken a position that they're not going to be a party to this type of enforcement. But we've seen what's happened to other judges around the country who have also taken that position. We've got a judge who's been indicted federally for taking such a position. I've yet to see our mayor's office, our council, our sheriff's office, or our Commonwealth attorney's office come together and say, this isn't a personal opinion that we have. This is a requirement of the Virginia Code that we keep our courthouses free from these types of disturbances. That's what I think needs to be done, and that's what I would do.
Thank you so very much. So we're ready to head into closings. Now, Commonwealth Attorney McEachin gave the first opening. So, Mr. Barber, I'll give you the option of either giving the first closing or having the last word. Which one do you want?
I'll have the last word.
All right.
Thank
So, Commonwealth Attorney McEachin, you've got 2 minutes for your closing.
Great, thank you. So once again, thank you all for attending on a beautiful Saturday afternoon when you could have been someplace else, but that's how important this election is and how important all elections are. Thank you to our CDC, thank you to Professor Chambers, but most of all, thank you for letting me be your Commonwealth's attorney for the past 4 years. I am very excited about being your Commonwealth attorney for the next 4 years, to bring a family justice center to Richmond, to continue to work with all of the stakeholders on reducing gun violence, to work with all of the stakeholders to make sure that there are second chance programs, whether it's restorative justice or therapeutic dockets or anything else that the Community Justice Reform Unit does. And ultimately, to make sure that people are held accountable for their actions. That accountability does not have to be incarceration necessarily. It does not have to be conviction necessarily, but people cannot just run amok like we see in DC. They cannot run amok in the city of Richmond. That filters down and tarnishes everyone and everything. I am glad that our office is doing so well on on convicting people who have committed nonviolent offenses. And I want to make sure that you all understand that I have been out in the community and I will continue to be out in the community, accessible, available, and bringing information to you all so that you know what the law is, so that you know what the office is doing, and so that public safety, second chances, and accountability continue to help Richmond rise. Thank you.
Thank you so much. 2 minutes, Mr. Barber.
Thank you again to everyone who's attended either in person or online. It's been great to be able to speak with you all. Thank you to Man and Commonwealth, to our interpreters, to the Richmond City Democratic Committee, Metro Richmond Area Young Dems, and of course the professor for some excellent questions. Ultimately, the choice in this primary is, what experience do you want? That's the question. The experience that we've had with this office is if they say they're going to do restorative justice programming, we don't get it. The experience that we've had with this office is if we've got public corruption happening in the city, if we've got government officials alleged to have misappropriated upwards of $500,000, we've got candidates for office in our city council elections appearing to submit fraudulent documents and interfere with a race, we're not going to get any action on that. That's our experience. Our experience on gun violence is that we don't make progress. We only have about 50% of our homicides cleared, only about 60% of those cleared convicted. So we end up with a city in which most people who are committing murder are getting away with it. Our experience on traffic safety is that cases aren't being presented. I'm sure folks are aware of the situation with Principal Greg Music out at Mary Munford. That case wasn't presented. I'm sure this committee especially is aware of the case of Sean Soares. That case wasn't presented. And so we've got a situation where we're hearing a lot about experience, but really it's about what experience we want as a city. The experience I want, the experience I would bring as your Commonwealth's attorney is making progress on these issues, asking what can we do differently and better every day, focusing on using the tools available to me to address public corruption, gun violence, traffic safety, and bring actual restorative programming in ways that we've not seen yet. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all about that. You can learn more at my website, tomrbaca.com.
Thank you all so very much. Thank you all so very much for attending. Please join me in thanking Mr. Barber and Commonwealth's Attorney McEachin for this lively discussion.
Okay, so we're going to take a 5-minute break and then we are going to do the sheriff's debate.
Thank you all so very much. So our two candidates for Richmond. Hold on a second. We'll see. So our two candidates for Sheriff of Richmond are our incumbent Sheriff Antoinette Irving and Mr. William Burnett. We will hear 2-minute openings from each of them, and Mr. Burnett will go first.
Thank you for having me here today. I speak soft, so I'm gonna get close to this mic. But thank you for having me here today. Thank you from the Democratic Party, Professor. I appreciate the opportunity to speak for you. I'm William Burnett, and I'm a candidate running for sheriff in the city of Richmond. I've done 32 years in the city of Richmond, fighting law and order. I have spent 20 years in the Richmond Police Department. I served as a sergeant with the Sheriff Police Department as well as a detective and all sorts of violent crime. I've also served as a lieutenant colonel for the Richmond Sheriff's Office, where I served as the role of operations. I handled all the operations that included budgets, safety, security, all those things that fall in that realm. My vision is that I want to reinvent the sheriff department. So I want to change a lot of things that we have done in the past. Those things have to change because of the issues that's going on now. As time moves forward, Richmond is the capital city of Virginia, and we have to change with those issues. One of the things that I plan on doing when I reinvent the city is I'm gonna focus on our youth taking a proactive approach on making sure that we reach out to them at an early age. Reaching out to them at an early age and doing the things we need to do is going to have an overall effect in crime. We need to build that relationship between the police and our youth in the city. I'm also going to play for the first time in the history of the Sheriff Department an active role in reducing crime in the city. People say that, how can you do it? We can do it. I'm also going to look into programming, and I'm not talking about programming that's going to be something that I just throw out, but it's going to be proven with results, issues, and I'm going to partner with other agencies to make sure that these things actively work. My goal is to build better people and make sure that when they come to the Richmond Sheriff's Office and leave, they leave a better person. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Antoinette Irvin. I'm the current sheriff of the city of Richmond. Thank you to the Democratic Party, the Young Dems, the professor, and all of you all for attending today, both here and online. As the sheriff of the city of Richmond, we've come a long way since 2018. We continuously work on programs for our individuals that are residing inside of our facility to ensure that they are growing and that they're moving forward. Our programs include mental health programs, education programs, behavioral programs, opioid programming, and those medical and mental health programs that can assist them in moving forward. Our goal is to ensure that they can come out of the facility and become an active and effective member of our community, making sure that they can be a part of our economic development. We have programs in vocation as well as academics. Our vocational programs include forklift, CDL, cosmetology, and barbering. We want to make sure that people can come out, have jobs, and sustain, be able to be productive citizens. We want to continue to make sure that the citizens that we have inside of our facility are working on themselves, working to become better family members, to have a growth with their family, to ensure that they know that they are an important part of their family. So thank you for your time, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you so much. So first question is Sheriff Irving. The public may want to know how the last 4 years have gone in the sheriff's office to figure out what the next 4 years will look like. So can you talk about any successes over the last 4 years and what specific changes you would make in how the sheriff's office functions over the next 4 years?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. With the sheriff's office, we continue to grow the programming that we have, and I want to make sure that we finish that job, making sure that individuals are sustaining their growth, that individuals make sure that they know what society is expecting of them, but also getting in tune with whatever traumas that they may have already had. And we've been working on trauma and behavior within the individuals that are inside of our facility, and we continue to do that. Over the next 4 years, we also want to make sure that we continue to develop programming within the community. We have almost up to 200 partners in the city of Richmond now that help us with different programs. We've obtained and been awarded over $8 million in grant funding to ensure that we can continue good programming in the city of Richmond, to ensure that the individuals that are inside of our facility can grow and know who they are and what it is that they want to do and become within themselves when they go back into society. Or if they're going to the Department of Corrections, to ensure that they can guide their family and be a productive part of their family. Thank you.
Burnett.
Yes, Sheriff Department that I'm hearing about now and what I'm seeing in the public is totally different, because it has the highest death rate in the state of Virginia, continuous overdoses, ongoing staffing losses, pending federal lawsuits, ongoing state investigations, and just an unsafe environment. So I'm confused here that we see this in the public. This is not stuff that's being sort of heard of. These are actual facts. These are the things that are going on in the Sheriff Department. When I say I want to talk about redefining the Sheriff Department, yes, we want a program. We want programs, not programs that I'm just going to talk about and brag about and say this is that and this is this, but programs that actually work. Now, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel, because too many people in the situation that's going on down there now are dying. So I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I'm going to partner with other agencies like the the Chesterfield Sheriff Department with the HEART program. They take a holistic approach on how they treat people, how they observe and make sure that the things that they are doing, not blaming themselves. So I'm going to look at Richmond the Chesterfield Sheriff Department, programs like the Real Life program, the Safe Life program. It's a bunch of programs out there now that you can bring into the Sheriff Department, drop it in place, and you can immediately start going. If I sit around and I talk about things that I'm going to do and what I want to do. When I look back 8 years from now, I didn't go back 4 years, but I go back 8 years. The place has gotten worse, worse, and worse and worse, and it continues to do the same thing. So the sheriff department, the sheriff is talking about is something different that we see in the public.
Sheriff Irving, you got 30-second response if you like.
Absolutely. The grant funding ensures that the programs that we conduct in the sheriff's office are vetted, and also we have to have statistical results that go along with those programs. As far as people dying, we've had a few deaths in the last few years. However, that does not make the total of deaths that have been in the previous years of the sheriff's office. In the 3 terms that the previous group had, there were an average of 15 deaths per year. We've had deaths in the last few years, yes, but we are dealing with opioid pandemic, and we're trying to make sure through our MAT program, which City Council and the city has worked with us on, to ensure that we can continue to help individuals understand their addiction and their substance misuse.
Thank you very much. So I do want to give both of you an opportunity to talk about your experiences. So Mr. Burnett, start with you. What in your experiences should convince the public that you're the right person to lead the sheriff's office for the next 4 years?
Well, let me just talk about some of the things that I did when I was Lieutenant Colonel for the Sheriff Department. When we first took over office in 2006, we came into an office where the budget was $5 million over deficit. It had a $5 million deficit. By the end of that year, we reduced that deficit and had a surplus. And all 12 years we followed, we made sure that we either met budget or we came within the budget that we were required to be at. We had reduced assaults by 85% while we were in office. We were, for the first time in the history of the Sheriff Department, we became a accredited unit or organization. We were the ones that came in and built the new $132 million Justice Center, a center that they had been trying to reach for multiple years. They couldn't get it done. We were able to do it going into our second terms by working in partnership with the city council. We stayed fully staffed within 15 to 20%. We never, ever reached the numbers of 180. And to consistently not only reach 180, but 8 years later, you still at 180 positions vacant. That's not turnover, that's management. And that has to do with morale. It has to do with a lot of, not just keep hiring people, but actually retaining people. That's the problem. The Sheriff Department don't have a problem hiring. You can look into the records and see that they constantly hiring people. They just can't keep nobody. When you have an area, thank you.
Sheriff Irving?
I believe the question was what it is that we're doing now that can convince the community that this office and that this sheriff should continue to be the sheriff of the city of Richmond.
Yes,
and
indeed.
what we are doing is we are working with partners within the city and within the community to ensure that they understand what our goals are. We're working hand in hand with those individuals. Individuals are coming into our facility. Again, we have close to 200 partners that come into our facility. We have programs that are already working. We have attained $8 million worth of grant funding to ensure that we can provide different services for individuals that are inside of our facility. As far as retaining, I believe that there's an issue throughout public safety and law enforcement for individuals that would like to stay in this career. The problem is we have individuals now that are not looking for careers, and that's in any job that you have. We are working to train all of these individuals up to excellence to ensure that they can perform the jobs that they need to perform. We're not the only ones that have vacancies, but we're working hard to continue to partner with other law enforcement agencies to ensure that we can do the job that needs to be done. We've brought in programming. We've worked with, I was one of the first people in this Tri-Cities area to have programming. We started with Life Without a Crutch. We assisted the city of Richmond with their program. We assisted Chesterfield County with their program in reference to individuals that are inside the facility. Thank you very much.
30 seconds, Mr. Burnett.
The sheriff said that they're not dying at the rate. I would disagree with that. it was in the press not too long ago that people are dying at a rate higher than anywhere in the state of Virginia. If you have these wonderful programs that you talk about, how do people continue to overdose constantly? Just last week, it was 4 people went out to the hospital, all for drug overdoses. And then we hide behind the notion that we talk about, well, we don't know what it is at this time. It's probably some medical emergency, but we know when you give Narcan and all those types of things, it's a drug overdose. So the programs that are not working as they stand today.
So I think it's fair to just jump into the question. So Sheriff, obviously one of the primary responsibilities of the sheriff is to run the city's jails. Are people confined in the city jail properly fed and cared for?
Absolutely. We feed the 3 meals. We have our nutritionist that approves our meals. They are properly cared for. We have a medical provider that ensures that their medical and mental health services are taken care of. And we're ensuring that people are able to engage in any of the programming that we have there and are able to engage with their attorneys and their family members. Thank you.
Burnett.
Can you repeat that for me?
Sure. One of the primary responsibilities of the sheriff is to run the city's jails. Are people confined in the city jail properly fed and cared for?
I can't speak to what's going on inside the jail as it stands. I can only tell you about the reports I receive. I can only tell you about the people that I hear. The state evidently disagrees with the sheriff because they are under a work program as it stands. And it specifically read that the sheriff did nothing to put in place to make sure that staffing or inmates were safe and that the sheriff department falsified documents. So I'm still confused, but this is actual facts if you read it. So I can't speak to what's going on now, but I can tell you based on reports, it's not what the sheriff is talking about.
Obviously, Sheriff Irving, if you'd like 30 seconds to respond, you are more than welcome to.
Absolutely. As there is fact that we, as well as other sheriff's officers in the state of Virginia, have been placed under compliance plans. And the goal of all compliance plans is to ensure that all work is being done simply because the state of Virginia knows that there's a retention problem within different agencies. And what we're doing, we put in security measures to ensure that we can continue to do the job that we've done and do it even better to ensure that we can secure the facility, monitor inmates, and monitor the activities that go on within the Justice Center.
Thank you very much. So Mr. Burnett, do you think that the city provides adequate funds for the sheriff's office to properly feed and care for the people under its custody?
Well, the fortunate part is the city does not provide the majority of the funding that comes from the state through the comp board. So most of the funding is through. I will tell you that when I was lieutenant colonel, we had about 432 employees. Our staff made $20,000 less money than what they make now, and we had 1,500 more 1,000 more inmates than what is currently down there now. And we were able to give money back to the city. We were able to turn a deficit, like I said earlier, from a deficit to a surplus in 1 year. We were able to bring in let me go back. We were able to fully make sure that we returned all the monies that wasn't used to the city and the state back every single year, all 12 years we were in office. So I would say as it stands when I was in office, because that's what I can speak to, is that we were fully staffed. The people made $20,000 less, and we were able to still give money back to the state itself. So I'm thinking that I don't know the circumstances of what's going on down there.
Sheriff Irving?
Again, I believe the question was, does the city provide enough funding for the sheriff's office? And yes, the city does provide funding. In our contractual vendors that we have, we work with the city council to ensure that we have enough funding for services, for medical, for food. And we've done a really good job of doing that. And to say in the 7 years that I've been there, not include this year, which it will include, we have always given money back to the city of Richmond. We do not overspend. and we ensure we give money back. And we also want to make sure that our staff members are paid comparably to other agencies so that they won't go to other agencies and leave us for the amount of monies that they pay.
Thank you.
Mr.
Mr. Burnett, 30 seconds, absolutely.
Well, the sheriff said, and again, I'm speaking facts. The sheriff said that they gave money every time that she's been in office, but city did an audit about 4 years ago, and as you read the headlines, it said the sheriff office is 333% over budget. So if you did do that, I don't know where it came from. That's something new to me.
All right. So Sheriff Irving, I will ask a question I asked of our CAs before, candidates before, and that is, does the sheriff's office have sufficient resources to run the office? And if the office received an infusion of new resources, how would you allocate the additional funds?
The resources that we have are pretty good resources. We would like to enhance the medical and mental health program services that we have. We would like to enhance that because we're having more and more people come in that are coming in with some type of illness or some type of mental health concerns or substance abuse issues. We would like to be able to do more work with that. However, as far as changing a lot of things, we just want to make sure that we can get the right quality people to work for the sheriff's office. And that's the problem that everyone's having as far as keeping people and making sure that people want to be in this career, because this is a career. It's not an easy job. And if you want to take on this job, you have to make sure that you're going in with a strong, open mind to take on all the challenges that may come up. So we want to continue to do the work. We believe we're doing some good work. Have we had some bumps in the road? Absolutely. And every other agency, not just a sheriff's office, but every other agency has. It didn't seem to be important about how many vacancies anybody had until other law enforcement agencies had vacancies. So we'll continue to try to make sure our staff pay is comparable and to ensure that the amount of programming that we have can be effective with the individuals and growing themselves as well as growing relationships with their family members.
Thank you very much. Mr. Burnett.
Yes, I talked about earlier how I plan to reinvent the sheriff's office. I think that we have plenty of resources because when the sheriff department was designated for a direct supervisory building, if we had about maybe a little over 1,000 people, now they have about 500. So the staffing was designated for that standard, that 1,000 persons. So it gives you an abundance of staff that you can utilize if, one, you're fully staffed. That's the problem we have here. And when we talk about that, I do plan on playing a positive role in with our youth in the city. One of the things that I want to do for the first time in the city of Richmond, I want to start, we call it PAL in the police department. We're going to call it SAL, meaning a Sheriff Athletic League. We also want to play a role in following these youth. So we're going to create a cadet program. We're going to create a cadet program where we can follow our youth from a certain age up to a certain level. And hopefully we get to the point where we can retain some of those people. So when you talk about reinventing, I'm gonna play a role in reducing crime in the city of Richmond. I'm gonna take it back to the day when sheriffs used to go out and get those that did bad things about it, the worst of the worst in our city. So we're gonna create a warrant unit to go out there and hunt the worst of the worst. And yes, the sheriff has that authority to do so. The sheriff has actually more authority than the police department because we can go outside of the city of Richmond when it comes to making felony arrests. So we can do a lot more in the sheriff department as well. Programming, mental health, all of those types of things that I plan on playing a role
in. Sheriff Irving, 30 seconds.
Oh, gotcha. Talk a little so.
Sheriff Irving, 30 seconds if you'd like.
We continue to work in our community. We average over 123 community outreach programs throughout the year to ensure that we are connecting with our youth, our seniors, and the individuals that live in our city. We want to make sure that we build a great rapport with individuals within our city. We recently partnered with other agencies for Dignity on the Go for those individuals that may be in a place in their life that they can't do certain things. We are providing resources and showers and haircuts and clothing for those individuals. So every year we continue to grow our program and to ensure that we're not just doing things for individuals within the facility, but we're also doing things for people in our community to reduce the amount of crimes that they may commit if they're not in tune with themselves.
Thank you very much. So one of the things that I've heard in the conversation is an overlapping of responsibilities between and among the sheriff's office and the police and possibly even the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. Could you talk to the assembled masses about where are the lines between those organizations? Because presumably they're doing different things. So can you tell us with your first 90 seconds, Mr. Burnett, where are the lines between what the sheriff's department should be doing versus what the police are supposed to be doing versus what, say, the CA's office is supposed to be doing in terms of social programs?
Yes, I would say that it shouldn't be a set of lines dividing them, in my opinion. That's it. We have to bring everybody to the table to make sure that we're doing the right things by the citizens of Richmond. So my goal is to partner as much as possible with the sheriff department, with the police. Well, we'll be the sheriff department, but the police department, as well as the Commonwealth attorney. But not only that, with the health department, with other citizens in the city of Richmond, politicians. We need to bring everybody to the table in order to make sure that we reduce some of the crimes that we have in our city. And having a program like I talked about earlier that focuses on our youth, making sure that they're doing the right things, following them up, mentoring them, and keeping them going, a part of that process. Because if I start a program, I'm gonna have to reach out to the Commonwealth attorney. I'm gonna have to reach out to the police department. I'm gonna have to set up POW programs and things like that. That's gonna bring everybody to the table myself. So in my opinion, I don't think we should have a separation of organization. I think we need to bring more people to the table because that's the only way that we're gonna be able to reduce some of the problems that we have in the city of Richmond.
Thank you. Sheriff Irving?
Let it be understood that by statute of the state of Virginia, we are doing what it is that a sheriff's office is been entitled to do at this point. However, we partner with the police department. We work with the police department. We work with the Commonwealth attorneys, the judges, and our counsel as well. We have some bumps in the road with some of our leadership, not very many leadership members here in the city of Richmond. However, we are part of the gun violence program that is here in the city of Richmond. We do community projects with the police department. We work jobs with the police department. We can do, as he stated, as a constitutional officer, the sheriff is the highest ranking law enforcement officer in that particular jurisdiction. We do not do the police powers simply because there was an agreement made some years ago within the jurisdiction about police powers. However, we continuously do things with the police department to ensure that we are helping to enforce the laws and making sure that people are in custody when they need to be in custody, and that whatever records or criminal information that needs to go to the Commonwealth's attorney office or the public defender is done that way.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Burnett, what do you say?
As I said earlier, that we do have to bring everybody to the table. I would say, as a constitutional officer, the sheriff is exactly right, but we still ask our citizens in the community, we ask our citizens to be a part of reducing crime. We ask them to get involved. How do we have an organization with almost 500 staff members, positions, I ain't gonna say staff, but positions. How do we ask nothing of them when it comes to reducing crime? I'm gonna play a very serious active role in reducing crime in the city of Richmond. I'm gonna partner with the police department. I'm gonna bring others from the police department to work with me, as well as sheriff deputies are planning on coming back.
Thank you very much. So Sheriff Irving, how do we make sure that people want to have a career in the sheriff's office as opposed to just generally a career in law enforcement?
Having a career in the sheriff's office starts with the presentation that we as sheriff's deputies put forth when we are in the community and when we're doing our job. We're the ones that people look at. We're the ones that they watch the job that we do. Do they want to do the type of job that we do? Can we work with the college students and high school students to encourage them at an early age to recognize that a sheriff's office is important and the things that we do? Some of the things that hinder us as a sheriff's office is that you have to work in the back of a jail. You can't just go out and drive a car or work in the courts. You have to start somewhere. You have to learn all of the basics step by step. I did in 1988. And I think I did a pretty good job and continue to do that. And obviously, Mr. Burnett, after he left the police department, became a deputy sheriff in the city of Richmond. It's not a bad career. It's just you have to find people in this day and time that would like to do the things that we do. After COVID and the unrest, it became shaky for all public safety and law enforcement agencies as far as keeping people. So it's the presentation, is what you put on the table and they see every day as to what it is or who it is you want to be. The professionalism, the ethics, the hard work, the means in which you communicate with individuals, how you deal with people. Not being physical with people all the time, but making sure that you can have an actual conversation to help with the needs of individuals, to make sure you're doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do when nobody's looking.
Mr. Burnett.
I think in order to, like you said, Sheriff touched on some things that I agree with her at this time. But I will say that we have to do things differently in how we maintain, keep, retain staff, sheriff department. And as she said, part of the things that I want to do is sell the city. If I'm going to retain people, I got to give them opportunities. I got not only give them opportunities to thrive. The sheriff herself said, you're working in the back of the jail. Who wants to work in the back of the jail all the time? That's why I have a plan of creating new opportunities. Not only am I going to create the PAL program that the SAL, we're going to call it SAL program that they're going to be a part of. We're going to create a K-9 division because the drugs are running rampant in the sheriff department. You can get drugs in the sheriff's office as easy as you can get it on the street corner. So I'm going to bring in 4 K-9 dogs. They're going to be drug detection dogs, and they're going to work at every shift. Every shift will have a dog to detect drugs coming into jail. Everybody will go through one door, and it won't be no revolving door like it is now. You come to work and you stay in and then you leave. So you have to create opportunities. Unlike the sheriff said, working in the back of the jail, who wants to do that? You got to create opportunities. You got to be respectful to people. You got to be fair. You got to be consistent. You got to make sure that you peak money. When we did a study, let me talk about money real briefly. When we did a study on money, we found out that people came in third when it came to money. It was mostly opportunity and respect. Money was third. Thank you.
Sheriff Irving, I imagine you might want 30 seconds to respond.
Yes, sir. Just to make sure that it's understood that we are the representatives of the city. We are the representatives of the community. Understanding that being the sheriff's deputy starts with all aspects, which begins in the jail. How is it that you learn the different avenues? We've learned that individuals that work in the back of a jail communicate better than individuals that work just on the street, because you're up close and personal, and you are you, and you have to communicate and defend yourself with people on a regular basis. The jail is not a bad place. I've worked in it for 26 years. And I think we did a pretty good job, but you have to be open to different ideas and different concepts. And we have people that work in different units. And if you create new units, you have to have people to work in those units as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have going to some audience questions and some questions maybe from online.
Yes. So again, please come up here. If you are on the Zoom, ask questions in the chat, either in English or Spanish. And if you, again, if you need someone, raise your hand and they will come to you.
Good afternoon. All the police departments in this city are understaffed, in most cases severely. The call response times for the police are getting better, but still leaving the residents scared that an officer won't arrive in a timely fashion. One of the main issues the neighbors and I have identified in regards to the current sheriff's leadership is how slow, up to 6 hours, a police officer who is trying to book an arrest has to wait to get back out on the street. Some major cities, it's only 20 to 30 minutes. The current situation is minimizing the effectiveness of the police. Why is this happening? How will you expedite the booking speed to allow our minimal amount of officers who need to be on the street to protect each other and the residents of Richmond to get back out there more efficiently?
Thank you for the question. What we are doing now is ensuring that we can move more expeditiously. Some of the problems come in when we have multiple police officers come in at the same time with a large number of arrests. First of all, they have to go to the magistrate's office, and the magistrate's office is where they get their warrant. Once they get their warrant, then they have to come in and they have to be seen by our medical facility, our medical agents. If they're not clear to come in medically, then we have to make sure that they get the attention that they need. And oftentimes that can be a delay because of them having to get with medical. We don't want people in that are dying or people that are already injured. So we want to make sure that we can get them the attention that they need. We have been working on the process to make sure that we have the staffing, and we do, and we have the medical staffing that we do in those areas. But we have a multitude of officers coming at the same time. There's a process that they also have to go through before they even come to us.
Well, being a police officer, I can speak on that part very easily because I have been down there where I was the only person that was in lockup and spent 3 hours down there trying to get in. And the magistrate is the least part of the issue that's going on. I go to the door after I done completed all the process, and somebody says my blood pressure is elevated. We get shuttled off over to MCV hospital. Community hospital. You come back from community, go in. No, that's not good enough. Then you got to take them up to community. Our command staff has been locked up in the back and not allowed to leave the facility because we refused to take a person to the hospital that a blood pressure was elevated or they had some pre-existing problem. Staffing is the biggest issue at that place down there. And the only way you're gonna fix it is you got to fix the staffing. But if you don't fix the leadership in the organization, meaning making sure that people have the available staff that you need there, making sure that we not tying our officers up all afternoon. It's been times when I've been down there, 10 officers tied up. That's officer off of the street of the city of Richmond, meaning they're not patrolling the streets out there. So this process is, that's going on down there now. It's just unheard of. And you could ask any officer out there on the street, we spend hours of time down at that place.
Hi, thank you both for being here, first of all. Something you've both mentioned and the other candidates also mentioned was a lack of funding, a lack of resources. I'm curious, well, as a two-part question, what efforts have you taken or will you take to advocate better for those resources at the General Assembly? And what are the most prevailing issues you wish General Assembly members better understood about the issues you're facing?
Well, I was waiting. I would say that at this current time, in my opinion, I don't think it's an issue of finance, because when you are 180 to sometime even 200 people, you have an abundance of money because the state is still paying you the money for these positions, even though you're not using them. So you are looking at 500, almost 800 less inmates than you had when I was in office. They dealing with 5 where we were dealing with 12. So there's no issue of financing. It's how you use your money. You can't go out and buy ATVs to ride around in the city, you know, or Mercedes vans that we have parked down at the sheriff's office, or command centers that we don't play no role in reducing crime and being outside of the city. It's how you spend your money. There ain't nothing about whether you have enough or not. Sheriff officers have plenty of money right now as we speak.
We do have funding at the city of Richmond, and what we make sure that is with the failed security procedures that were put in place with the new facility, we try to make sure that we can capture those needs of security. When you have individuals trying to get in the facility, by all means, because there's not a security measure there, we do have to spend funding to do that. You're talking about us buying things that we don't need. During the water crisis, the things that we didn't need, we needed, and we held court. We held court in the Justice Center. Nobody knows that, but we held court in the Justice Center with the toys and tools that we purchased as a resource. But we want to make sure that we're able to assist the citizens of the city. And we do have the funding, and we do talk to members of the General Assembly, and they have come over to visit to see our program and to see what our needs are, and we communicate that to them. So we have a relationship with members of the General Assembly, as well as members of the Virginia Sheriff's Association, which lobbies for all sheriffs in the state of Virginia.
Well, she called it herself toys. That's what they are, toys, wasted taxpayers' money.
Thank you both for facing the public and taking our questions. My question would be about the numerous allegations, both from the media and from some families of inmates that have had episodes at the jail about transparency from this administration. There seems to be a reputation that has developed in the media through having to file Freedom of Information Acts, even some allegations that they were going to be charged for getting data and information from your department. So I'm curious to know your response about the allegations of a lack of transparency from this administration.
Thank you for the question. We are very transparent with the actual family members and the members that are known as the emergency contact members for particular family members. We talk to them. If you look in my phone right now, you have people's mothers' names and numbers in my phone that we speak to whenever there's any type of crisis or medical issue that goes on or death that goes on at our facility. We speak to the family member that we've been told to speak with. And it's up to them at that point to speak to any other family members because of HIPAA.
I would say that transparency is very important. I would say that it's not being done down there. I mean, all you got to do is look at the news and the families, mothers, daughters, sisters on TV talking about how I can't get an answer, and that's multiple times. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create for the first time in the history of the Sheriff Department, it's called the Office of Inmate Advocacy. That office will advocate on the rights internally of all inmates, meaning you will have somebody you will call, you won't be shuffled off to another phone, a hold, or talk to any kind of way, or hung up on. That office will advocate on the rights of all the inmates in the jail. So when they call because they have issues, they'll have somebody to talk to and get an answer.
Good evening.
Mhm.
Jerome and Richmond City Democratic Committee want to thank you for putting on this this debate or forum. It's been excellent, and I would hope some more organizations will do the same thing for our candidates. This question is for both candidates. I was driving over Churchill earlier this morning, and I noticed a lot of people out in the Justice Center from the community, and I guess a lot of your people were there as well, Sheriff. Can you tell us what was going on there this morning?
Absolutely. We have a community food distribution and gun violence and gun safety program once a month. And we ensure that members of our community, and we found out members that don't even live in the city of Richmond, come to get food for their family members, their neighbors, or even for themselves. We know that it's tough times, and we want to make sure that we can do our part for the citizens of the city of Richmond.
Well, that's good. I think that's a wonderful program, Sheriff. I'm gonna continue it when I become sheriff. But
Thank you for that.
Well, I would tell you this. I would tell you this, that same program that you talk about, I volunteer on South Side of Richmond and on the north side of Richmond that help with a program identical to that. So we provide families up to 600 and 700 meals and bags and food and homeless, all that. So we both play a serious role in that effort. Yeah.
And lastly, as it relates to families of inmates, what are you currently doing, Sheriff, to support the families of inmates? It's very important. And if you become the sheriff, Mr. Burnett, what would you do to support the families of Richmond?
Repeat yourself, and then you
I'm
directing
sorry.
that to both of us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The question is, I asked the sheriff, what is she currently doing with her administration to support the inmates' families here in the Richmond area? You're an inmate in jail. What is being done to support the families of the inmates? And the question to you would be, what would you do if elected sheriff to support those families of inmates?
Right. Well, at this point right now, I'm doing nothing to support that effort because I'm not in a position to report. But if you let me get to it, I'll tell you. You seem to be favored to the sheriff, and you want to give me the opportunity to speak. What I would do is no different than what she's doing now when it comes to programming and all that. That's a very good program. Like I said, I think it's an excellent program. I volunteer at a program like that, but I would take it a first step further. When I was a police officer in a position to do things, I was able to give 1,000 book bags to students out there going back to the school. I gave coats to the homeless, over 100 of those, and dropped them off all parts of the city as a tour that we put on. I also played a role in giving over 100 kids Christmas one year. And I'm talking about not the little bags that you see other people giving, but I'm talking about the huge bags, the complete Christmas. So I have an idea. I have the organizational skills to plan and put on events like that. So I can promise you that I'm gonna do just as much and probably more than the current sheriff is now.
We currently ensure, as he's stating, that we do programs for our young people as far as school, book bags, clothes, Christmas time for all our different communities, Latino, Spanish, Three Kings, individuals within the city of Richmond, food programs. But what we also do is we ensure that not just when it's a holiday or when it's time to go back to school, but anytime you can call us and we're in a position to provide meals for you. And we're in a position to provide school supplies and clothing for individuals and provide them with the appropriate resources. Also, what we do with families, we have a program with the assistance families for inmates that individuals will be working with their family member inside of the facility to ensure that they can build a relationship and work on school projects together. So we continuously work on things with our community members, with our family members of the inmates to ensure that they can build relationships and not forget about the individuals that are incarcerated, but to build that rapport and be able to go back into society, understanding that it's a team effort in order to get back into the house. And when you get back into the house, you have to work diligently to make it work out.
Yeah, you certainly you're allowed another 30 seconds if you like.
Oh, and again, I think it's great that the sheriff is doing what she says she's doing. That's the obligation to the people that we serve, is that we go out and play a role in making sure that families' needs are taken care of. Not only do we play that role, but that we making sure the city is safe. And that's what I'm gonna continue to do. I'm not gonna reinvent the wheel. I'm gonna do the same things that some of the other sheriffs in this area do. But I'm also gonna make sure that while I'm out there doing all those things, that my building ain't burning in destruction with deaths and all types of things like that.
Okay. I'm gonna ask one really quick question. I'm gonna ask for just 60 seconds for closing, and that's this. If you're successful in winning the sheriff's position, in 4 years' time, how will you know if you succeeded, and how should the public judge if you've succeeded?
Okay. I will say this, that, and I tell people every time I go and speak somewhere, I say, if I don't do the things that I say I'm going to do, then you as a citizen should get rid of me. You should unelect me. If you don't see progress, if you don't see that the numbers that show progress, that's not just throwing out stuff about what's going on and I got 200 programs and all that kind of stuff, but you need to see results. You need to see progress. You need to see recidivism. You need to see all those things working together and hand in hand and making sure that these happen. And if you don't see it, if you see the things that are going on now, then we need to change leadership. We changed the fire department chief. We changed the Richmond Police Department chief. We changed the mayor. We changed a lot of other officials. If you're not doing your good job, the citizens of Richmond should do what they're supposed to do and unelect us. That includes me.
How would I know that in the next 4 years, all the things that we are doing are applauded or approved by the citizens of the city? It's the conversations that we have. It's the meetings that we have. It's the results that we show when we send a productive person back home, when we send someone home, just like this morning. A couple came to us this morning to say, thank you for saving my life. I'm 2 years sober. How is it that I can help? When we're walking, we are walking in the communities and they're saying, thank you for what you did for us. Thank you for what you did for my family member. When my family member was sick, you helped them. Do we miss people? We may miss somebody because they're not letting us know what's going on with them. However, we're diligently walking through those halls. I personally am diligently walking through those halls by myself to see exactly what it is that's going on with the individuals that are in our facility to ensure that we can help them. So hopefully they're having those conversations with their family members to ensure that they are getting the services that they need while they're there, and that we're able to provide them the resources or connect them to the resources when they're walking out.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. We are at closings right now. Now, Mr. Burnett gave the opening first and had the first word. So Sheriff Irving, you have the choice of whether you want to go first with your closing or if you want to have the last word.
I'll take the last word, please.
All righty, Mr. Burnett, 2 minutes.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna take up 2 minutes because we talked a lot about what the sheriff plans are and what my plans are. I'm gonna say that, I'm gonna do I'm not gonna go into rehashing all the things that I talked about earlier. Know that I'm gonna do everything I can in my power as the next sheriff for the city of Richmond to do what's best for the citizens of Richmond. Not what's best for me, not what's best for my friends and my family, none of those types of things. I'm gonna do what the people put me in office to do. And that's to make sure that we maintain safety in our city, that we make sure that we provide them with all the needs that they need, that they come out of jail, come in jail and go out of jail better than they were before. Not sitting around idle, trying to figure out who I'm gonna victimize when I come back out in the community. That's not my goal. My goal is to make sure, like I said, that we build better families. That means we're gonna go through mental health and substance abuse. Those are things that my goal is to keep those type of people out of jail. They shouldn't even be in jail. So, but we have to, when they do come and play. So we're gonna provide mental health care. I'm not reinventing the wheel. Like I said, I know multiple people that I've already partnered with that they're gonna just bring their program and drop it in place and we're gonna start the ball rolling. So to the citizens of Richmond, I'm not a politician, don't want to be a politician. What I want to do is do a good job for you. If you choose to elect me, I ask that you go to my webpage. You can put William Burnett or just Google me. Matter of fact, just Google me. That's the easiest thing and it brings up everything. I ask you to elect at your choice the best candidate you see before you.
I'd like to say thank you all for having this debate and bringing us here. Thank you, Mr. Burnett, for your time and your energy as far as working on this campaign. The thing that I want to talk about in closing is, in the last 8 years, we've worked diligently for the city of Richmond. We've worked diligently to provide more programming, to provide more community outreach, and to ensure that we can keep the inside of the facility safe, secure. We have passed every inspection that we've had. We just recently passed another inspection, but we're passing our inspections. We're meeting the requirements that we have, and our goal is to exceed those expectations from DOC and DCJS and Vallepsi and all of those individuals. Those are our goals, is to exceed what the expectations are, and we're going to continue to do that. And hopefully the citizens of Richmond will see the progress that we've made since 2018, that we can continue to work hard and produce good citizens when they come out, provide housing, jobs, resources, and things that individuals need within themselves. We're working on trauma, we're working on behavior, because if people don't know what it is that they're going through, they're going to continue to go through those things. So they have to identify with what it is that they're going through. And our goal is to ensure that we can continue to do that. And my goal as the sheriff is to continue to lead the sheriff's office into the next 4 years and beyond. Thank you so very much.
So thank you so much for coming out today. Please join me in thanking these two candidates and wonderful dedicated public servants for this lively and informative discussion. Please vote and please have a good afternoon.